I want to thank this week's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. Hello, I'm Odin, and today I'm going to continue making parts for this guy. It's the RX-78 backpack unit. So the parts I'm waiting on, I'm going to make the basic shape first. I used Armorsmith Designer to scale a 3D model to the size I needed. It's not that big. Then with Tinkercad, I exported a series of cross sections at that full size. Now I can just measure the drawings. The best place to start are the side panels. I know that they're 16 millimeters thick. The bottom layer will be cut from 6 millimeter HD foam, and the top layer is cut from 10 millimeter HD foam. I use contact cement to glue both layers together, and I make sure the parts lay flat when they're glued so they're not curved. The edges of the black line need to have a bevel or a slope cut into them. The line on the top is where the slope starts, and the bottom edge is where the slope is going to stop. I tape a ruler to the black line, and then rest the ruler against my bandsaw blade. Then I can tilt the table until the blade lines up with the top corner of my piece, and I know that that's the slope that I need. I remove the ruler and then cut along the corner line, and I get the correct angle for all the edge cuts. The saw shows what degree the table is tilted at. Most of the cuts for this project are 45 degrees, some are 40 and a few are 20. There are a few big panel lines in the backpack, and for these I cut a 3 millimeter wide channel out of the sides. Using some 3 millimeter craft foam, I cut a slightly smaller filler piece to fill back into the gap that I cut. I glue the craft foam parts in, and I have a 3 millimeter wide, 3 millimeter deep panel line with a flat, smooth bottom. I have the side panels, and they fit, and I can start cutting the pieces to make the top. First, I double check the sides of the cross section, and everything is fine. I make the list of the panels I need, and which edges need to be 45 degree angles and which are 90 degree. And then I can cut everything from 10 millimeter foam. And when I glue them together, I keep them flat on the table, sticking the edges together, and then I fold the two pieces up to get the sharp corners that I want. There are two circles in the back, and the upper panel has a cutout to go around them. I measure my real grade gunpla and multiply my measurement by 13.486 in order to get my cosplay size. That looks about right. And I use my bandsaw to make the cutout. The 13.486 number will only work for the backpack. I can't just scale the entire Gundam up by that amount because the suit needs to fit a human and be wearable. Gundam have wider shoulders, smaller heads, and longer legs than humans do, so some adjustments have to be made for a wearable cosplay scale suit. I start planning the panel lines I need now. So these are going to be burnt, and then this I will cut, even though it'll go a little deeper than it should. And that'll give me everything on the top. And the rest of the front, these are burnt. So I just need to cut this piece, which is literally this piece, mirrored again, the width of that. All right, oh, that's not so bad. I cut the top section to make 3 millimeter panel lines, and I remove 3 millimeters worth of material to be sure everything will fit. I use contact cement to glue in a piece of craft foam. These are the last two 3 millimeter panel lines that I'm making for the backpack. The rest are smaller and will be burnt in with a wood burner. I add some pieces of 6 millimeter foam to make the recessed area deeper, and I can glue in some 6 millimeter foam behind it. Now this is where the circles on the back will fit. I use the center guide on my CosTool circle cutter to cut out a pass-through in the 6 millimeter foam. Then I glue some more 6 millimeter foam around the cutouts to actually make the circles. Now I might make these into vents later, so I wanted them open for now. There is a small 6 millimeter thick panel that fits between the circles, so I used a wood burner to make the panel lines before I glued it in. The inside of each of these circles has a crossbar, and these are cut from 4 millimeter foam. I use contact cement to stick the circle panel to the top, and then stick the side panels on. I needed to do the side panels first, so I knew the main back panel would line up with the 3 millimeter panel lines on the side. I put a piece of 10 millimeter foam across the inside. Now this is where I'm going to put the Velcro to attach the backpack to the blue chest. And everything still looks right, and it still fits. All right. The bottom half of the backpack has 4 maneuvering thrusters, or rocket nozzles, each in their own recessed box. I cut a pattern from foam core for the raised sides. I cut match sets on the bandsaw and glue on 10 millimeter foam to make the bottom. The rocket nozzles are actually going to attach here, so these panels need to be a little thicker. 6mm foam for the front panels, with a 2mm foam skin to go over them. This makes that recessed panel in the middle. Cut the outside edges to 45 degrees. Then glue the single panel that fits between them. Now this panel already has the wood burner panel lines added before gluing because I'll never get in there once it's done. I burn in the rest of the panel lines now. Some of these will go under the rocket box, and others just go over the top of the pack. Then I glue in the rocket box. I have paper between the glue and the sides because that keeps the contact cement from sticking, and I can get the front to lay down flat where I want it, and then I remove the paper so I can stick the sides on. I added some 6mm to the side panels because it gives a little more space between the sides and the rocket box. Check how it looks because I enjoy watching this come together. There are 3 more boxes on the underside as well, and they get 2 tiny rockets. I start cutting the pieces I need for the big beam saber holsters that go on the sides. I've got the bulk of the backpack finished. It's almost done. The big pieces I need are the beam saber sheaths, holsters, holders. They go on the sides here. So I've got one finished so I can figure out the geometry of how it goes together. I've got one other one here cut up and ready to go. I'm gonna put that together. Now there's a smaller vent on the bottom, so I build that out first. And then I cut the angles into the sides. Armorsmith Designer gave me a perfect outline for the bottom, so I mark where the side panels need glue. And I glue the front panels to the other side, and then glue them together. There are 2 more top panels. This open box is where the beam saber will fit. I mark which edges need an angle that needs cutting before glue. And then I glue it all together. And cut the bevels into all the edges. You can see that there's a right side and a left side for the beam saber holsters. And I'm always happy to see things fit correctly. I really didn't know for sure until these were built if they would fit in the cutout area as well as they do. The top and the bottom of each rocket box needs a set of flaps that look like they're for vector control, but they actually sit lower than the nozzles will, so I'm really not sure what these flaps do. A pair of raised panels is on top, and this is where the handles go for the backpack. To make the handles, I'm going to use riser tubes from a drip sprinkler system, because I can just heat them where I want them to bend, and then bend them into the handle shape. I left the legs a little long so I could super glue them into the top after the pack is painted. To make the correct nozzles, I found a website that'll generate a truncated cone pattern for your custom size, and it looks just like a paper cup when it's flattened out. I cut 2 sets from 4mm foam and glue the edges together. On the big cone, I measure and burn in some rings. Then I cut down my paper pattern and add a ring of 2mm foam around the nozzle. I cut out some 2mm strips for the last detail on the big nozzles, and these will hide the seam lines. Rocket engines. All right. I measure the small end and cut caps for the base of each nozzle. They'll fit over a 1/2-inch PVC pipe, which gives an easy way to mount the nozzles into the rocket boxes. So I really like the flaps that are on the bottom of the backpack because it allows me to just set it down, which is surprising. I didn't expect that to happen. So that's it. This is the backpack. I'm not going to go any further with it. There are 2 more kind of pieces that belong to it. There's a pair of beam sabers that go here, so you can just reach over your shoulder and pull your beam sabers out. I'm not going to do those because they're actually more armament than backpack, and I'm going to put all that together in the same video, so I'm doing all that at once. So for now, the backpack is finished. I need to paint it. The rest of the Gundam has been spray painted so far, but I never bought the backpack color. So I mixed a custom color for my PlaidFX paints. Thin it with some water and airbrush it on. Airbrush medium is probably better to use than just water, but I didn't have any. And then there are a couple of panels that are light gray. And then I can add in all the black panel lines. I'm waiting to fully weather this until the entire suit is done, so I can do it all at once and the weathering will match that way. I put a single piece of Velcro across the top so I can connect the backpack to the blue chest. After I get Joe back into the shop for a test fit, we can add more straps if they're needed. Most of the materials I used for this project are available for order online, and you can have them shipped right to you. I put a list and links in the description. And this is part 3 of my full suit Gundam build, the maneuvering backpack unit. Now there's some plans to add some lights for the thrusters and maybe some cooling fans, but that's going to happen in another video. For now, this completes the torso for the Gundam. My next video is going to be the arms, which will be made from foam because this is how Odin makes. One of the main things is the pair of beam saber. And again, I want to say thank you to this week's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. And you can help too. Just download the game using the special link in the description of this video. I want to thank Daniel Sachs, Michael Talbot, and all of my Patreon supporters. My Patreon support is the #1 thing that makes this show possible. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe. Have an idea for something for me to make? Please leave a comment below. And if you make any of these projects, you can send me a picture.